AITA for refusing to give my sister the down payment money I saved because she needs it more. I'm 29F and my sister is 33F. For most of our lives, I've been labeled the responsible one. I was the kid who followed rules, saved birthday money, and worked part-time jobs through college. My sister, on the other hand, has always been more impulsive. She's charismatic and people naturally gravitate toward her, but she also tends to jump into things without thinking long-term. About 5 years ago, I made a goal to buy a small house or condo before I turned 30. I've lived with roommates since graduating, skipped vacations, drove my old car into the ground, and took freelance work on weekends. I built a strict budget and stuck to it. It wasn't glamorous, but I finally managed to save a little over $42,000 for a down payment. My sister's life has been more chaotic. She got married at 25, divorced at 30, and has 2 kids, 6 and 4. Her ex doesn't pay consistent child support, and she works retail. She's struggled financially, and I won't pretend I haven't helped before. I paid her electric bill twice, covered daycare for a month when she was short, and bought groceries when things were tight. I never expected repayment because they're my niece and nephew, and I love them. A few months ago, my sister told us she and her boyfriend want to start fresh and buy a house together. I was surprised because they've only been dating a year, and he changes jobs frequently. She said they found a small place in a decent school district and just needed $35,000 for the down payment. I congratulated her, but didn't think much of it. Then last Sunday, my parents invited me over for dinner. Halfway through, my mom said, "Your sister told us about your savings. We're so proud of you." I hadn't told them the exact amount, so that already made me uncomfortable. Then my dad said, "We were thinking maybe this is an opportunity to help each other." My sister started crying almost immediately. She said she feels like she's drowning, that this house would finally give her kids stability, and that I could stay with them temporarily if I wanted. She then directly asked if I would give her my down payment money. Not loan, give. I honestly thought she was joking at first. I said I'm planning to buy my own place this year. She responded that I'm single, have no kids, and have time, whereas she's on a deadline because the house might sell to someone else. She said I could rebuild my savings in a few years since I have a better career trajectory. My parents backed her up. My mom said families should sacrifice for each other, and that I've always landed on my feet. My dad said owning a home is more urgent for a family with kids than for a single person. They suggested that once she's more stable, she could help me in return. I asked what happens if she and her boyfriend break up. The house would be in both their names. My sister got defensive and said I'm being negative. I pointed out that her last relationship ended in divorce and that financially tying myself to her boyfriend, even indirectly, feels risky. That's when she accused me of thinking she's irresponsible. The conversation escalated. I said I'm not comfortable giving away years of savings for a house I won't own. I offered to help her review her budget, maybe contribute a smaller amount as a loan with a written agreement, or help her find first-time buyer programs. She said that offering a loan instead of a gift proves I don't trust her. My mom cried and said she never thought she raised daughters who keep score. My dad told me that when they're gone, we'll only have each other. My sister said I clearly care more about a hypothetical condo than about my niece and nephew's future. I left early because I felt ganged up on. Since then, my sister has sent me long texts about how she loses sleep worrying about her kids' stability. She sent photos of the house and the backyard, saying she can picture the kids playing there. My mom texted me that she hopes I can search my heart and reconsider. Here's the part that makes me question myself. I can technically afford to give her the money and start over. It would send me back years, but I wouldn't be homeless. I'm also aware that I don't have dependents. Part of me wonders if I'm being selfish by prioritizing my timeline over my niece and nephew's comfort. But another part of me feels like this is exactly why I worked so hard. I don't have a partner to fall back on. I don't have dual income. This money represents security for me. If I give it away and something happens, no one is offering me $42,000. I also can't ignore the pattern. She tends to assume things will work out and relies on emotional appeals when they don't. If I give her this money, I'm afraid it won't be the last time. What if her pairs come up? What if her boyfriend loses his job? Will I be expected to step in again because I have more flexibility? My extended family has now weighed in because my sister told them I'm refusing to help her kids have a stable home. An aunt called me cold. A cousin said I must not understand what it's like to be a mother. I feel like the villain in a story where I'm just trying to keep what I earned. I love my niece and nephew. I want them safe and secure. But I also want my own home, my own stability, and not to feel like my responsible choices automatically make me the family safety net. So AITA for refusing to give my sister my down payment savings, even though I technically could, because I don't want to sacrifice my own future for her house. If you enjoyed the video, don't forget to leave a like and subscribe to the channel. It helps the content grow and motivates me to create even more great videos. Turn on notifications so you don't miss any new uploads. By the way, I'm curious, when do you usually watch my videos? While working, studying, or just relaxing at home? Let me know in the comments. I'd love to hear from you. Thank you for your support. AITA for refusing to give my sister the down payment money I inherited, even though she says I owe her for ruining her wedding. I am 29. My sister Claire is 32F. For most of our lives, Claire has been the golden child. She's outgoing, dramatic, and somehow always in the middle of something. I'm quieter and tend to avoid conflict, which usually meant I just gave in when she pushed hard enough. 2 years ago, our grandmother passed away. She and I were very close. I helped her with groceries, drove her to appointments, and spent Sunday afternoons playing cards with her. Claire loved her too, but she lived 3 hours away and rarely visited. In her will, Grandma left me $40,000 and left Claire her jewelry collection. The money wasn't a surprise to anyone because Grandma had told me she wanted me to use it for a house someday. Claire was furious. She didn't yell at the funeral, but she made comments like, "Well, I guess we know who the favorite was." I tried to downplay it and told her the jewelry was worth a lot and had sentimental value. She said she couldn't pay rent with sentimental value. Fast forward to last year when Claire got engaged. She and her fiancé planned a wedding way outside their budget. They booked a barn venue, hired a live band, custom florals, the whole thing. I gently asked her once how they were affording it, and she said, "We'll figure it out." People always give cash gifts. About 3 months before the wedding, she called me crying. Apparently, her fiancé had lost his job, and they were suddenly short almost $25,000. She asked if she could borrow money from me. She didn't say how much at first, just that she needed help and that family takes care of each other. I asked how much. She said $20,000. I was stunned. That was literally half of what I had left from Grandma's inheritance after taxes and some student loan payments. I told her I needed to think about it. She immediately started saying that if I didn't help, they'd have to cancel the band and lose deposits, and people would judge her. She also said Grandma would have wanted me to support her. That hit me hard. I ended up agreeing to lend her $15,000, but we wrote up a simple agreement that she'd pay me back within 2 years, no interest. She rolled her eyes at the idea of paperwork, but signed it. The wedding came and went. It was beautiful. Claire gave a speech about how family stepped up when we needed it most, but didn't mention me by name. I didn't expect a parade, but it stung. Here's where things blew up. 6 months after the wedding, I found out from my mom that Claire and her husband were house hunting. I called her and asked how that was possible given that she still hadn't paid me back a cent. She said they were manifesting their future and that renting was throwing money away. I reminded her of our agreement. She said they didn't have the money yet, but once they bought a house, their equity would grow and then paying me back would be easier. I told her that made no sense and that paying off debt should come before buying property. She got defensive and said I was being controlling. I told her I wasn't controlling. I just expected to be repaid as promised. She then dropped a bomb. She said she thought of the money as more of a gift anyway because I owe her for what happened at the wedding. Apparently, during the reception, I had an argument with her new mother-in-law. The Emile had made a comment about Grandma's inheritance, saying loudly at our table that it was strange one grandchild got cash and the other got trinkets. I replied that Grandma made her own choices and that it wasn't anyone else's business. It wasn't a screaming match, but it was tense. Claire later said it caused drama and embarrassed her. Claire told me that because I created a scene, I should consider the $15,000 my contribution to repairing the damage I caused to her special day. I was floored. I said I defended Grandma's wishes and didn't insult anyone. So I should have just smiled and kept quiet. We argued for over an hour. She said if I forced her to pay me back, I'd be taking money away from her future children. I said that was manipulative and unfair. She accused me of caring more about money than family. I reminded her that she was the one trying to rewrite a loan as a gift. The final straw came last week. She sent me a listing for a house and wrote, "Imagine Thanksgiving here." Then she added, "If you could just let the loan go, this could really happen for us." I replied that I would not be forgiving the loan and that I expected the first repayment installment by the end of the month, as we had originally discussed. She responded by telling our parents I was threatening her financial stability. Now my mom is saying maybe I should compromise and accept smaller payments or partial forgiveness to keep the peace. I feel like I'm losing my mind. I already compromised by lending her such a huge amount in the first place. I never would have spent that money on a party for myself. I've been saving carefully and looking at modest condos within my budget. Meanwhile, she's browsing houses with granite countertops and talking about equity while ignoring her debt. Part of me feels guilty because I know weddings and homes are big milestones. But another part of me feels like she's counting on my guilt to get what she wants. I love my grandmother, and the idea of using her gift to bankroll my sister's lifestyle choices doesn't sit right with me. Claire has stopped speaking to me unless it's through passive-aggressive group texts. My parents say siblings shouldn't let money come between them. I agree in theory, but I also think respect and accountability matter. So AITA for refusing to forgive the loan and insisting my sister pay me back before buying a house. AITA for refusing to pay for my sister's wedding after she uninvited my wife. I'm 34M, married to my wife Claire, 32F, for 4 years. My younger sister Jenna, 29F, is getting married this spring. Growing up, Jenna and I were close in that typical sibling way where you fight constantly but would still defend each other against the world. When our dad passed away 10 years ago, I stepped into a more supportive role, helping her through college applications and even co-signing her first apartment lease. Financially, I've done well in my career. I work in tech and earn significantly more than anyone else in my immediate family. Jenna works freelance, and her fiancé Mark has a modest income. About 8 months ago, Jenna called me crying because their wedding budget had spiraled out of control. They had booked a venue they couldn't really afford and underestimated catering costs. She asked if I could help. I told her I'd discuss it with Claire. We have joint finances and make big decisions together. Claire agreed we could gift them $15,000, which would cover the remaining balance with some cushion. Well, I told Jenna she was over the moon. She said I was saving her dream wedding and that she'd never forget it. Here's where things get messy. Claire and Jenna have never been particularly close. They're polite, but not friends. Jenna can be blunt, and Claire is more reserved. There have been a few awkward family dinners where Jenna made comments about Claire being too sensitive or not fun enough. I've always shut that down as gently as possible, but Jenna tends to brush it off as joking. 2 months ago, Jenna hosted a bridal shower planning brunch with my mom, some bridesmaids, and Claire. I wasn't there, but Claire came home visibly upset. Apparently, Jenna had made a comment in front of everyone that Claire doesn't really get marriage anyway, because we don't have kids yet and are still acting like we're dating. Claire told me she felt humiliated. I confronted Jenna about it. She insisted it was a harmless joke and accused Claire of being dramatic. I told her she needed to apologize. She said she would, but never did. Last month, the bomb dropped. Jenna sent out finalized invitations. Claire didn't receive one. At first, we assumed it was a mistake. When I called Jenna, she told me calmly that it wasn't a mistake. She said she and Mark decided they only wanted people who fully support their relationship at the wedding. She claimed Claire's vibe at events felt judgmental and that she didn't want any negativity on her big day. I was stunned. Claire has never said a negative word about Mark or their relationship. She's quiet, yes, but she shows up and participates. I told Jenna that excluding my wife was unacceptable. Jenna said it was her wedding and she could invite whoever she wanted. She also added that since I was her brother, she assumed I'd still come. I told her I wouldn't attend without my wife. That's when she brought up the money. She said they had already used part of the $15,000 to pay deposits and that it would be cruel to pull support now. I hadn't even mentioned the money at that point. I went home and told Claire everything. She immediately said we should just let them keep the money to avoid drama. But the more I thought about it, the more angry I felt. The money was a gift from both of us. How could she accept it and then deliberately exclude the person who agreed to give it? I called Jenna again and told her that if Claire wasn't invited, we would be withdrawing the financial gift. I said I'd give them 30 days to repay what hadn't yet been spent, and we'd consider the rest a lesson learned. Jenna started crying and said I was trying to ruin her wedding out of spite. My mom called me later, saying I was putting the family in an impossible position and that weddings are stressful enough without ultimatums. Now the family is split. My mom thinks I should suck it up and attend alone to keep the peace. She says Claire should be the bigger person and understand that it's Jenna's day. One of my cousins messaged me saying it looks like I'm using money to control the situation. On the other hand, my best friend says Jenna is out of line and that I'm right to stand by my wife. Jenna sent me a long text saying she feels like I've chosen Claire over my real family. That hurt. Claire's my real family. She's my partner. I told Jenna that marriage means your spouse comes first. She replied that if I truly loved her, I wouldn't attach conditions to a gift. Here's the thing. I don't see it as attaching conditions after the fact. I see it as basic respect. If she had told me up front that Claire wasn't welcome, I never would have offered the money. It feels manipulative to accept our help and then sideline my wife. Claire is now worried that this will permanently damage my relationship with Jenna and my mom. She says she doesn't want to be the reason I lose my sister. I told her she's not the reason. Jenna made this choice. But I can't deny that things feel fractured. Mark hasn't spoken to me directly, but I heard through my mom that he thinks I'm being petty and that weddings aren't about extended spouses. That comment really got under my skin. Claire isn't some random +1. She's my wife. I keep replaying everything in my head. Maybe I could have handled it more calmly. Maybe I should have tried one more time to mediate instead of going straight to the financial angle. But at the same time, I feel like there's a principle here. If I show up without Claire, what message does that send to her? That she's optional? That my family can disrespect her without consequences? The wedding is in 3 months. Jenna has not apologized. The invitation still hasn't been extended to Claire. The repayment deadline I gave them is approaching, and they've only returned a small portion of the money. I'm torn between wanting to preserve my relationship with my sister and wanting to protect my marriage. I don't regret standing up for Claire, but I hate the idea that I might be remembered as the brother who ruined his sister's wedding over guest list. So, AITA for pulling the wedding money and refusing to attend unless my wife is invited? AITA for refusing to give my sister the house our parents left me because she has kids and I do not? I 34F have one older sister, Mara 37F. Growing up, Mara was the golden child. She was outgoing, athletic, and always needed something. Rides, money for trips, help with homework she forgot about. I was the quiet one who did well in school and mostly stayed out of trouble. Our parents loved us both, but it was always understood that Mara required more attention. When Mara got pregnant at 19, our parents stepped in completely. They let her and her boyfriend move into the basement, paid for diapers, and basically co-parented my nephew for the first 3 years of his life. The boyfriend left before my nephew turned 2. A few years later, she had another child with someone else, and the cycle repeated. Our parents helped again. Meanwhile, I went to college on scholarships and part-time jobs. I moved out at 18 and never moved back. I love my niece and nephew, but I always felt like my role in the family was to be the stable one who did not ask for help. 5 years ago, our mom got sick. I moved back to our hometown to help care for her while still working remotely. Mara would visit, but she often said it was hard because of the kids' schedules. I handled most of the hospital appointments and eventually hospice care. When our dad passed 2 years later, I was the one living in the house and taking care of everything. Before he died, Dad updated his will. The house, which is fully paid off, was left to me. Mara received a smaller cash inheritance, and our parents' life insurance was split evenly. Dad told me privately that he wanted me to have the house because I had put my life on hold to care for them, and because Mara had already received so much financial help over the years. I did not ask for this arrangement. After Dad's funeral, Mara did not mention the will. It only became an issue recently. I have been slowly renovating the house with my savings. I replaced the roof and updated the kitchen. I still live there. Last month, Mara and her kids were evicted from their rental after she fell behind on payments. She called me in tears, asking if they could stay with me temporarily. I said yes immediately. They moved into the 2 spare bedrooms. At first it was fine, but quickly became chaotic. The kids are 17 and 14 now. They are loud, have friends over constantly, and do not clean up. Mara works long shifts and expects me to monitor homework and cook dinner because I work from home. When I try to set boundaries, she says I do not understand what it is like to be a single mom. 2 weeks ago, she sat me down and said we needed to talk about the house. She said it is too big for just me and that it makes more sense for the kids to have stability. She proposed that I sign the house over to her and move into a small condo using part of my savings. She argued that I have a good job and no dependents, while she is struggling and raising 2 almost adults who need space. I reminded her that Dad left the house to me. She said that Dad was old-fashioned and probably assumed she would always have our parents to fall back on. She also said that morally, the house should go to the sibling with children because it keeps the family line secure. That comment stung. I told her I was not signing anything over. I offered to let them stay another 3 months while she saves for a new place. She got angry and accused me of valuing property over family. She said I have always been selfish and that caring for our parents did not entitle me to everything. I tried to stay calm and pointed out that she received tens of thousands of dollars in help over the years, not to mention living rent-free multiple times. She said that was different because she had kids. The argument escalated. She said if I loved my niece and nephew, I would want them to grow up in their grandparents' house. I said loving them does not mean surrendering my home and my security. I also told her that I put my career and dating life on hold to care for our parents, and this house is the one tangible thing that came from that sacrifice. Now she barely speaks to me except to coordinate schedules. The kids have started making comments like, "Must be nice to have everything handed to you." I suspect Mara has been venting to them. Some extended family members have weighed in after Mara told them her version. An aunt called me and said I should consider what our parents would have wanted for the grandchildren. I responded that our father made his wishes clear in writing. I feel guilty because I know housing is hard to afford and I do not want my niece and nephew to suffer. At the same time, I worked hard for my stability. If I give up this house, I will likely never be able to afford another one in this area. I also resent the assumption that because I chose not to have children, my needs are automatically less important. Mara has started looking at houses online and forwarding me listings, saying things like this would be perfect for the kids once you transfer the deed. I have refused to engage. I am now considering giving her a firm move-out date, but I worry that will permanently damage our relationship. So, AITA for refusing to give my sister the house our parents left me, even though she has kids and says they deserve it more than I do. AITA for refusing to give my sister the house her grandparents left me because she needs it more. I am 29 chef. My sister, Lauren, is 34F. Growing up, Lauren was always the golden child. She was charismatic, outgoing, and the first grandkid. I was quieter and more introverted. Our grandparents and I bonded over books, gardening, and old movies. I spent most weekends at their house from the time I was 10. Lauren rarely visited unless there was a birthday or holiday. Our grandparents owned a small 3-bedroom house on a decent-sized piece of land. It's nothing extravagant, but it's paid off in a nice area and has a huge backyard with fruit trees my grandfather planted himself. I love that house. When I went to college, I'd still visit during breaks. When our grandmother got sick, I rearranged my work schedule to take her to appointments. Lauren lives in the same city, but claimed she was too busy with her social life and later with her boyfriend. 2 years ago, our grandparents passed within months of each other. It was devastating. When the will was read, I learned they had left the house to me. Lauren received some money, their car, and a few pieces of jewelry. I was shocked. I honestly expected the house to be split between us. Afterward, Lauren pulled me aside and said, "It makes sense. You were always there." She didn't seem upset at the time. I decided to move into the house and fix it up slowly. I put a lot of my savings into repairs. A new roof, updated plumbing, refinished floors. I kept the garden the way my grandfather had it, adding a few new plants. It's become my sanctuary. Here's where things blew up. Lauren got married last year and is now pregnant. Her husband was laid off recently. They're renting a small apartment and struggling. A few weeks ago, she came over for dinner and started talking about how cramped their place feels and how they can't afford to buy a home in this market. Then she said, very casually, "You know, it would make so much more sense for us to live here. This is a family house. You don't even have kids." I thought she was joking. I laughed. She wasn't. She went on about how I'm single, work remotely, and don't need all this space. She said the house should really go to the sibling who's continuing the family line. She suggested I either give them the house outright or let them move in while I find a small condo. I told her absolutely not. I said our grandparents made their decision, and I've poured time and money into this home. It's mine. She got quiet, then said, "So you'd rather your niece grow up in a shoebox apartment while you rattle around alone in a 3-bedroom house?" I told her that's not fair. Her financial situation isn't my responsibility. She accused me of being selfish and valuing property over family. The next day, my mom called. Apparently, Lauren had told her I was refusing to help them. My mom said she understands it's legally mine, but asked if I could at least consider letting them stay for a few years. She said families make sacrifices for each other. I said I've already made sacrifices. I was the one who showed up for our grandparents. I was the one who handled the hospital paperwork and sorted through decades of belongings. I'm the one paying property taxes and insurance. Lauren then sent me a long message saying she knows our grandparents loved her too and that they probably assumed I'd do the right thing and share. She said keeping the house to myself is hoarding a family asset. I reminded her she received a significant amount of money from the inheritance. She admitted most of it went toward her wedding and paying off some of her husband's debts. She said that's in the past, and what matters now is giving her child stability. I feel guilty sometimes. I do have space I don't strictly need. 1 bedroom is my office. 1 is a guest room. The backyard would be amazing for a kid. I imagine my grandfather smiling at the thought of his great-grandchild running around. But I also remember how alone I felt caring for our grandmother while Lauren was on vacation. I remember her telling me she can't handle hospitals. I remember cleaning out the fridge the night our grandfather died because no one else wanted to. Part of me feels like this house is the only tangible acknowledgement of that effort. Not that I did it for a reward, but it feels deeply unfair to be told I don't deserve it because I don't have a husband and baby. Last weekend, Lauren showed up unannounced with her husband. She walked through the backyard and said, "Just imagine a swing set right there." Her husband started talking about how he's handy and could build a nursery in the smallest bedroom. It felt like they were already claiming it. I told them again that I'm not giving up the house and I'm not comfortable with them moving in. Lauren started crying and said, "I'm choosing a building over my own blood." She said when our parents are gone, it'll just be us, and I'm ruining that relationship over pride. Now my extended family is involved. An aunt called me cold. A cousin said if I don't want kids, what's the point of keeping a family home? My dad is staying out of it, but looks disappointed every time it comes up. I'm starting to question myself. Am I being selfish for holding on to something I technically don't need as much as they do? Or am I allowed to keep what was given to me without being emotionally blackmailed? So, AITA for refusing to give my sister the house our grandparents left me, even though she's pregnant and struggling? AITA for refusing to give my sister my late husband's wedding ring after she announced her engagement? I 34F lost my husband Daniel 3 years ago in a car accident. We had been married for 6 years, together for 10. It was sudden and brutal and completely rearranged my life. For a long time, I could barely function. Therapy helped, my friends helped, and slowly I built something that resembles a normal routine again. I still miss him every day, but the grief is no longer suffocating. One of the most important things I have from him is his wedding ring. It's a simple gold band with a small inscription on the inside that says "Always D." We picked it out together because he hated flashy jewelry. After he died, I had the ring put on a chain and I wear it around my neck most days. On hard days, I hold it in my hand. It's one of the few physical things that still feels like him. My younger sister, Claire, 29F, recently got engaged to her boyfriend of 2 years. I'm genuinely happy for her. She invited our parents and me over for dinner 2 weeks ago and made a big announcement. Everyone was excited. Later that evening, after a couple glasses of wine, she pulled me aside and said she wanted to ask me something important. She said she has always admired Daniel's ring. Apparently, she thought it was timeless and elegant. She told me she and her fiancé are trying to save money for a house, and custom rings are expensive. Then she said she thought it would be incredibly meaningful and romantic if she could use Daniel's ring as her fiancé's wedding band. She framed it as a way to keep Daniel's love story alive and make him part of her big day. I honestly thought she was joking at first. When I realized she was serious, I felt like someone had punched me in the stomach. I told her I wasn't comfortable with that. I said the ring is one of the only things I have left, and I'm not ready to give it away. Claire immediately got defensive. She said I'm not using it as a ring anyway, that it just sits on a chain. She said Daniel would have wanted love to continue, and that it's selfish to keep something so meaningful locked away when it could symbolize a new marriage. She even said that I could still see it whenever I wanted because we're family. I tried to stay calm, but I was shaking. I told her that seeing another man wear my husband's ring at family events would not comfort me. It would hurt. It would feel like watching someone step into a role that doesn't belong to them. She rolled her eyes and said I'm being dramatic and that it's just a piece of metal. After that, the night ended awkwardly. The next day, my mom called me. She said Claire was crying and felt rejected. My mom said that while she understands the ring is sentimental, I should consider what a beautiful gesture it would be. She suggested that Daniel would not want his ring to be a source of conflict. My dad has stayed mostly neutral, but did say that families should support each other's milestones. Since then, Claire has sent me multiple long texts about how expensive rings are and how this could be something special instead of sad. She also implied that me holding onto the ring so tightly shows I'm not moving forward with my life. That comment stung more than anything. I have worked incredibly hard to rebuild myself, and I don't think letting go of my husband's ring is the metric for emotional progress. I'll admit there's a small part of me that wonders if I'm being overly possessive. Daniel is gone. The ring will not bring him back. Sometimes I do take it off and leave it in my jewelry box for days at a time. But every time I imagine handing it over and watching Claire's fiancé slide it on his finger at their wedding, my chest tightens. I picture sitting in the audience, clapping while staring at the inscription that was meant for me. It feels unbearable. I offer a compromise. I told Claire I would help pay for their rings as a wedding gift. Not the entire cost, but a significant amount. She said that defeats the purpose. Because it's not about money, it's about meaning. She said I'm gatekeeping love and turning something beautiful into something bitter. Some of my extended family have now weighed in because Claire vented to them. My aunt told me that objects only have the meaning we assign them, and I'm choosing to assign pain. A cousin said it would be like Daniel is blessing the new marriage. On the other hand, my best friend says it's completely inappropriate to even ask a widow for her husband's ring, and that I've been far more patient than she would have been. What makes this harder is that Claire and I used to be close. After Daniel died, she stayed with me for a week. She saw me at my lowest. That's part of why her request feels so shocking. She knows what that ring represents to me. It's not just a band of gold. It's the symbol of promises we made and a life that was cut short. Claire's fiancé has stayed out of it publicly, but he did text me once to say he doesn't want to cause tension and would wear the ring only if I was fully comfortable. I appreciated that, but Claire insists that deep down he really wants it and is just trying to be polite. At this point, the wedding is in 8 months, and this issue keeps resurfacing. Every family dinner has this undercurrent of tension. I feel like the villain for not wanting a hand over a piece of my past. At the same time, I feel like I'm being pressured to give up something that still anchors me. So AITA for refusing to give my sister my late husband's wedding ring, even though she says it would turn a symbol of loss into a symbol of new love. AITA for refusing to give my sister the house our grandmother left me, even though she has kids and I don't. I'm 32F and my sister Lauren is 35F. We grew up in a small town where everyone knows everyone, and our grandmother basically raised us after our parents divorced. She owned a modest 3-bedroom house that's been in our family for decades. It's not a mansion, but it's paid off, in good shape, and in a neighborhood where prices have gone up a lot in the last few years. Grandma passed away last spring. It was devastating. About a month later, we found out through her will that she left the house to me. Not to both of us. Just me. I was shocked. Lauren was shocked. Everyone was shocked. For context, Lauren is married with 3 kids under 10. I'm single, no kids, and I rent a 1-bedroom apartment in the city about an hour away. Lauren and her family currently live in a cramped townhouse that they're renting because they've struggled financially for years. Her husband has been in and out of jobs, and they've had some medical debt from their youngest being born prematurely. When the will was read, Lauren didn't say much at first. Later that night, she came over to my place crying. She said Grandma must have made a mistake. She said it didn't make sense for me to get the house when she has a family. She kept repeating that her kids deserve stability and a backyard and good schools. I told her I didn't ask for this and I didn't influence Grandma. The will was written 2 years ago when Grandma was fully mentally competent. Apparently, Grandma had told her lawyer that she was grateful I visited every weekend, helped with groceries, drove her to appointments, and handled her bills when her eyesight got worse. Lauren visited too, but not nearly as often. She lives only 15 minutes from the house, but she was busy with work and the kids. Lauren started saying things like, well, I was busy raising a family. Sorry I couldn't just hang out with Grandma all the time. That stung because I wasn't just hanging out. I was helping. After a few weeks of tension, Lauren asked if I would consider doing the right thing and signing the house over to her. She said it's what Grandma would have wanted if she'd thought about the grandkids more. I said I didn't feel comfortable giving up something that was legally and intentionally left to me. That's when things escalated. Lauren told our parents, who are both still alive but live out of state. My mom called me and said that while it was technically mine, family should come first. She said Lauren needs it more. My dad said something similar, adding that I don't even want to live there since I work in the city. Here's the thing. I wasn't planning on moving in immediately, but I was considering either renovating and renting it out or eventually moving back to town. Owning property outright would be life-changing for me. I don't make a huge salary. This is the first time in my life I felt like I might have a bit of financial security. Lauren found out I was talking to a contractor about minor updates and completely lost it. She accused me of trying to profit off Grandma's death. She said I was choosing money over my nieces and nephew. She even told me that if I sell or rent the house instead of giving it to her, she'll never forgive me. The worst part was when she brought the kids into it. My oldest niece called me and asked if they were going to get to live in great-grandma's house or if I was taking it away. I later found out Lauren had been venting in front of them. That hurt more than anything else. I tried to compromise. I offered to let Lauren and her family rent the house at a rate well below market value, just enough to cover property taxes and maintenance. I thought that was generous. She said that was insulting. She said family doesn't charge family rent for their own childhood home. She also argued that because she has children and I don't, it's selfish for me to keep a 3-bedroom house. She told me I'm thinking only of myself and that I've always been independent to the point of being cold. I finally snapped and said that having kids doesn't automatically entitle you to other people's property. I reminded her that I spent years showing up for Grandma consistently, not because I expected anything, but because I loved her. I said it felt like she was reducing Grandma's decision to some kind of oversight instead of respecting that she made a deliberate choice. Now Lauren isn't speaking to me. My mom says I'm being stubborn. A few extended relatives have messaged me saying I should think about what's best for the children. One cousin even suggested that since I don't need the space, I'm hoarding something that could benefit a whole family. I feel guilty sometimes. When I picture the kids playing in the yard, it tugs at me. But then I also picture myself finally not worrying about rent increases or eviction or never being able to afford a home of my own. I picture the weekends I spent cleaning Grandma's kitchen, the nights I stayed over when she was scared to be alone after Grandpa died. Grandma had every opportunity to split the house between us or leave it to Lauren. She didn't. She chose me. Part of me feels like honoring her wishes means keeping it. Another part of me worries I'm sacrificing my relationship with my sister and her kids over a building. Lauren recently sent me a long text saying that if I loved her, I would sign the deed over and do the selfless thing for once. That really hurt because I don't think taking care of our grandmother for years was selfish. I don't think wanting stability for myself is selfish either. But with so many people telling me I'm wrong, I'm starting to question myself. Am I being heartless for not giving the house to my sister because she has kids? Or is it okay to keep what was intentionally left to me, even if it causes a permanent rift in my family? AITA? AITA for refusing to give my sister my extra house key after she told our whole family I'm selfish and paranoid? I'm 29F and live alone in a small house I bought 2 years ago. It's nothing fancy, but it's mine. I worked 2 jobs for years to save for the down payment, and I'm extremely proud of it. Growing up, my family moved constantly because my parents were terrible with money. There were evictions, shut-off notices, and more than one night where we slept at a relative's place because the electricity was out. Stability has always been my biggest goal. My sister Kayla is 33F. She's charming, spontaneous, and has always been the golden child. Where I'm cautious, she's impulsive. She's been evicted twice in the last 5 years and currently rents an apartment with her boyfriend, who has a habit of quitting jobs when he feels disrespected. I love my sister, but I don't trust her decision-making. About a month ago, Kayla asked if she could have a spare key to my house just in case. I asked what she meant. She said it would be good for emergencies, like if something happened to me or if she needed somewhere to go quickly. I told her I already gave a spare to my best friend, who lives 5 minutes away, specifically for emergencies. I also have a keypad lock on the garage. She immediately looked offended and said, "So your friend gets one, but your own sister doesn't?" I explained that my friend has a stable schedule, a car, and has never asked me for money. I didn't say the last part out loud, but it was in my head. Instead, I said I was trying to keep the number of spare keys limited for safety. She dropped it at the time, but apparently not really. Last week at a family dinner, my mom brought up how Kayla's building might be sold and the new management could raise rent. Kayla sighed dramatically and said, "Well, at least I know I can't count on my own sister if things go bad." Everyone looked at me. I asked what she meant, even though I had a feeling. She said, she won't even give me a key to her house. She thinks I'm going to rob her or something. I said that wasn't true, but I wasn't comfortable giving out extra keys beyond what I felt was necessary. My dad chimed in and said that families should always have access to each other's homes. My mom said I was being overly protective and that it wouldn't kill me to let my sister have a copy. Then Kayla said, "It's just a key. The fact that you're so weird about it makes it obvious you don't trust me. I would give you one." I responded, probably more bluntly than I should have, that I didn't need one because I would never assume I was entitled to her space. The table went quiet. After dinner, my mom called me and said I embarrassed Kayla. She told me I was holding on to childhood grudges and punishing my sister for being less financially stable. I tried to explain that it's not about punishment. It's about boundaries. I worked really hard for my house. The thought of someone having unrestricted access makes me anxious. I like knowing exactly who can enter my home. The situation escalated yesterday when Kayla showed up at my house unannounced. I didn't answer the door because I was in a work meeting. She texted me afterwards saying, "See, if I had a key, I wouldn't have had to stand outside like an idiot." I told her that showing up without telling me kind of proved my point. She responded that I'm acting like she's a criminal and that she was only in the area and wanted to hang out. Later that night, my aunt called me. Apparently, Kayla told several relatives that I refused to give her a key because I think she and her boyfriend would squat in my house. I never used that word. I did once tell my mom privately that I was afraid if Kayla and her boyfriend ever got evicted, I'd feel pressured to let them stay indefinitely. Somehow, that turned into me accusing them of planning to take over my home. Now my phone is full of messages ranging from, just make a copy. It's not. That deep to blood is thicker than water. One cousin even suggested that if I don't trust my own sister, maybe I shouldn't expect family support in the future. Here's the thing. If Kayla called me in a real emergency, I would absolutely help her. I would drive over, unlock the door, let her stay for a few nights if she needed to. But I want that to be a conversation, not an open-ended invitation. Once someone has a key, it changes the dynamic. They don't have to ask. They could just show up. I've also seen how this plays out. When we were younger, Kayla borrowed my car for a quick trip and didn't return for 2 days because she decided to visit a friend in another city. She didn't answer her phone the entire time. While I was in college, she asked to crash on my dorm floor for a weekend and ended up staying a week, eating my meal plan food and inviting people over. She's not malicious, but she ignores boundaries if they inconvenience her. My parents keep saying I'm assuming the worst. Maybe I am, but I don't think requiring someone to knock and wait to be let in is treating them like a criminal. It's just basic respect. Kayla texted me this morning saying, if you don't trust me with a key, just say that. So I did. I said, I love you, but I don't trust you to respect my space without clear limits. She hasn't replied. Part of me feels guilty. Maybe a key really is just a key, and I'm making it symbolic because of my own anxiety about losing stability. But another part of me feels like once I give in, I won't be able to take it back without an even bigger explosion. My house is the first place that's ever felt fully secured me. I don't want to feel on edge wondering if someone might let themselves in during a bad week. So, AITA for refusing to give my sister a spare key to my house, even though my whole family thinks I'm being cold and paranoid. Hey friends, if you enjoy this content, don't forget to like the video and share your thoughts in the comments. We really want to know what you like and what could be improved. What do you think of the video? Are there any topics you'd like to see in future videos? Your feedback really helps us get better. Thanks for being with us. AITA for refusing to give my sister my house keys after she said family doesn't need boundaries. I'm 32F, and I own a small 3-bedroom house that I bought 2 years ago after working nonstop through my 20s. It's not huge or fancy, but it's mine. I saved aggressively, skipped vacations, and lived with roommates until I could afford a down payment. Buying was the first time I truly felt stable. My older sister, Dana, is 35F. She's always been more spontaneous than me. She moves cities on a whim, changes jobs often, and tends to rely on people when things don't work out. Our parents adore her and have bailed her out more times than I can count. I've always been the responsible one, which usually translates to the one who doesn't need help. 6 months ago, Dana's lease ended and she decided not to renew because she wanted to manifest a better opportunity. She asked if she could stay with me for a few weeks while she figured out her next move. I said yes, with the understanding that it would be temporary. I even cleared out my home office so she could have a comfortable room. The first few weeks were fine, but then a few weeks turned into 2 months. She didn't actively look for apartments. She slept late, had friends over without asking, and used my car several times because hers was acting weird. She never offered to pay for utilities or groceries unless I directly asked. The real issue started when I came home one day and found that she had given a copy of my house key to her best friend. Apparently, her friend needed a quiet place to study for a licensing exam, and Dana thought my house would be perfect because you're at work all day anyway. I was stunned. I told her she had no right to give someone else access to my home without asking me. She rolled her eyes and said I was overreacting. She said it wasn't a big deal and that her friend was basically family. I told her that was irrelevant. It's my house. That night, we had a huge argument. She accused me of being controlling and obsessed with ownership. She said I've always been territorial and that it must be exhausting to live life constantly guarding what's mine. I told her there's a difference between being territorial and expecting basic respect. After that, I changed the locks. I didn't tell her beforehand. I just did it. When she came home and her key didn't work, she called me furious. I explained that I couldn't trust her judgment after she handed out a key without permission. She said I humiliated her and treated her like a criminal. I told her actions have consequences. She then demanded I give her a new key and promise not to change the locks again. I said no. I told her she could stay for another month while she figured out her housing, but I would keep the only spare key. If she needed access while I was gone, she could coordinate with me. She said that was ridiculous and that family shouldn't need permission to enter each other's homes. She actually said, family doesn't need boundaries. That sentence stuck with me. A week later, I came home early from work and found her friend inside again. Dana had apparently let her in before leaving for an appointment. I asked the friend to leave. She looked embarrassed and said she didn't realize it was an issue. I believe her. When Dana got back, I told her she needed to move out within 2 weeks. She accused me of abandoning her and said I was choosing property over blood. She cried and called our parents. Now my parents are involved. They say I'm being harsh and inflexible. They reminded me that if I ever needed help, family would be there for me. I said help doesn't mean unlimited access or disregard for my comfort. My dad said I should give her a key because it's just easier than fighting. Dana has since moved in with a friend temporarily, but she's barely speaking to me. She told extended family that I kicked her out over a spare key. I got a few texts from cousins saying I could have handled it more gracefully. Part of me wonders if I escalated things by changing the locks without warning. Maybe I could have sat down and had a calmer conversation. But I also feel like I tried that, and she dismissed me. For context, I'm not someone who hates sharing space. I've hosted friends, let coworkers crash after late shifts, and even let a neighbor store furniture in my garage during renovations. The difference is they asked and respected my rules. What really bothers me is the underlying attitude. It wasn't just about the key. It was the assumption that my home was communal property because we shared DNA. It made me feel like my hard work and sense of security didn't matter. At the same time, I know Dana struggles with stability. She tends to act first and think later. Part of me feels guilty because I know she doesn't have the same financial cushion I do. I worry that maybe I should have been more patient or clearer about expectations from the start. But I also keep replaying that moment when I realized a near stranger had access to my house without my knowledge. I felt unsafe in my own home. That feeling hasn't fully gone away. So AITA for refusing to give my sister a key and ultimately telling her to move out after she said family doesn't need boundaries? AITA for refusing to give my sister my late husband's wedding ring after she got engaged? I'm a 38F, and I lost my husband Daniel 3 years ago in a car accident. We were married for 9 years and together for 12. His death was sudden and traumatic, and I'm not exaggerating when I say it split my life into before and after. We didn't have kids, which makes some people assume I should be able to move on more easily, but anyone who has lost a partner knows that isn't how it works. When Daniel proposed, he didn't have much money. He was still in grad school, and he picked out a modest gold band for himself and a simple sapphire ring for me because he knew I didn't want a diamond. Over the years, that ring became one of the most important objects in my life. After he died, I couldn't bear to leave his band in a drawer, so I wear it on a chain around my neck. It's not about being stuck in the past. It just makes me feel close to him. My younger sister Lily is 29. She's always been more spontaneous and dramatic than I am. We've had a decent relationship, though growing up she often felt I got more attention because I was responsible. After Daniel died, she was supportive for a few months, but eventually started making comments about how I needed to get back out there and stop living like a widow in a Victorian novel. I tried to ignore it. Last month, Lily got engaged to her boyfriend of 2 years. I'm genuinely happy for her. She called me crying with excitement, and I drove over with champagne. Everything was fine until about a week later when she came to my house alone. She asked if she could talk to me about something important. I assumed it was wedding planning. Instead, she sat down and said she had a beautiful idea. She told me she wanted to incorporate something meaningful into her wedding and thought it would be incredibly romantic if her fiancé could wear Daniel's wedding band. She said it would be like having Daniel's blessing and keeping love in the family. I honestly thought she was joking. I laughed at first, but she was completely serious. She said since Daniel was gone and I wasn't using the ring in a traditional way, it would be better for it to symbolize a living marriage. She even suggested that it would help me let go in a healthy way. I told her immediately that I wasn't comfortable with that. I explained that the ring is one of the few tangible things I have left of him and that I wear it every day. She said I could keep wearing it until the wedding, but after that it should go to her fiancé. She framed it like I was hoarding something that could bring joy to other people. I refused. I tried to stay calm and told her the ring is not a family heirloom. It was Daniel's. It represents our vows, our history, and my grief. It isn't a prop or a token to be reassigned. She got upset and said I was being selfish and dramatic. She said I was prioritizing an object over her happiness. The situation escalated when she told our parents. My mom called me and said she understood my attachment, but also said Lily's idea was sweet and that maybe it would be healing to see the ring part of a happy day instead of something tied to tragedy. My dad didn't say much, but he suggested that Daniel would probably want the ring to be used rather than sit around. That comment hurt more than anything. Daniel wanted to marry me. That ring wasn't meant to circulate through the family like a spare set of dishes. It was meant for us. Lily came over again a few days ago and tried a different angle. She said I could attend the wedding, see her fiancé wear the ring, and think of it as Daniel being there in spirit. I asked her if she would ever give up her engagement ring to someone else if something happened. She said that was different because she's alive. I pointed out that Daniel not being alive doesn't make his marriage less real. She accused me of wanting to stay stuck as the tragic widow and said maybe this is why I'm still single. That was the point where I told her to leave. I've been in therapy for 2 years. I work, I have friends, I travel. The fact that I haven't remarried doesn't mean I'm clinging to a ghost. Now my family is divided. My aunt texted me saying grief can make people possessive and that maybe I should consider the bigger picture. A couple of cousins think Lily is out of line. Lily hasn't spoken to me since I asked her to leave, but I've heard she's telling people I'm trying to sabotage her wedding over a piece of metal. I don't think I'm wrong for wanting to keep my husband's ring, but I'm starting to question myself because so many people are framing it as symbolic rather than literal. They say it's just an object and that Daniel lives in my heart, not in gold. Maybe that's true, but objects carry meaning. That ring was on his hand the day we said our vows. It was on his hand every time he held mine. It was on his hand the morning he left for work and never came back. When I hold it, I remember the warmth of his skin and the weight of his hand in mine. I don't want to see it resized, polished, and placed on another man's finger while my sister walks down the aisle. That doesn't feel healing. It feels like erasure. At the same time, I don't want to permanently damage my relationship with Lily. She's my only sibling. Part of me wonders if I'm being too rigid, if maybe love should be shared in that way. But another part of me feels fiercely protective of the last physical symbol of my marriage. So AITA for refusing to give my sister my late husband's wedding ring, even if it means causing a rift in the family? AITA for refusing to let my sister move into my house after she announced her pregnancy at my engagement party? I'm 29F and recently got engaged to my fiancé, Mark, 31M. We bought a small 3-bedroom house together last year after saving for almost 5 years. It's not huge, but it's ours. One room is our bedroom. One is Mark's office since he works from home full-time. And the third room is a guest room that we also use for storage because we don't have a basement. My younger sister Lily, 26F, has always been what my parents call free-spirited. What that really means is she jumps from job to job, apartment to apartment, and boyfriend to boyfriend. My parents have bailed her out financially more times than I can count. I've always been the responsible one. I worked through college, paid off my loans, and have tried very hard to build stability. 2 months ago, Mark and I hosted a small engagement party at our house. It was mostly close family and a few friends. Toward the end of the night, Lily asked everyone to gather in the living room because she had big news. I assumed she got a new job or was moving somewhere exciting. Instead, she pulled out a positive pregnancy test and announced she was pregnant. The room went silent for a second. Then my mom started crying happy tears and hugging her. The father is her boyfriend of about 4 months. I had met him twice. He seemed nice, but very immature. Lily doesn't have a steady job right now. She does freelance gigs and works part-time at a cafe. After the initial congratulations, Lily said, laughing, "And don't worry, I already know where I'm going to stay when the baby comes." She gestured around at my house and said, "Big sis has plenty of room." Everyone laughed awkwardly. I thought she was joking. I smiled and said, "We'll figure something out." I didn't want to make a scene at my own engagement party. The next day, she called me and asked when she could move in. She said her current lease ends in 3 months and her boyfriend's apartment is too small and gross for a baby. I told her I hadn't agreed to anything and that Mark and I needed to talk about it. She sounded shocked and said, "But you have a whole extra room." When I talked to Mark, he was very uncomfortable with the idea. He likes Lily, but he pointed out that the extra room is the only space we have for guests and storage. And more importantly, we are planning to start try for a baby ourselves next year. He also works from home and needs quiet during the day. A newborn in the house would make that difficult. I agreed with him. I called Lily back and gently explained that we weren't in a position to have a baby in the house full time. I suggested she and her boyfriend look for a small 2-bedroom together and offer to help her budget and even give her some money toward a security deposit. She got very quiet and then said, "Wow, I can't believe you're turning your back on me." I tried to explain that I wasn't turning my back on her. I just couldn't offer her our home indefinitely. She said it wouldn't be indefinite, just until she gets on her feet, which is what she always says. Within a week, my parents were calling me. My mom said that family helps family and that I'm being selfish. She said I have a stable job and a house, and Lily is vulnerable and pregnant. My dad said it would only be for a year at most. I asked if they were offering to take her in. They live in a 2-bedroom condo and said they don't have the space. I pointed out that our house isn't much bigger and that Mark's office cannot just disappear. My mom said he can work at the kitchen table. Mark overheard that and was understandably upset. He said he feels like my family sees our house as a family resource instead of our home. Things escalated when Lily posted on social media about finding out who really has your back when you need them. Several of our relatives started messaging me, asking why I was refusing to help. My pregnant sister, one aunt even said, "If she loses the baby from stress, that's on you." That comment made me furious. I invited Lily over to talk face to face. I told her I love her and that I will babysit, help with appointments, throw her a baby shower, and be there in every way I can. I just cannot have her move in. She said I'm choosing my fiancé over my own blood. I said that Mark is my partner and this is his home too. She replied, "You've changed." The part that makes me question myself is that I know she's scared. She admitted she and her boyfriend fight a lot about money. She's overwhelmed and doesn't feel ready to be a mom. When she cried in my kitchen and said she just wanted her big sister to take care of her, I felt like the worst person in the world. But I also know her patterns. She moves in somewhere, contributes for a month or two, then something happens and she can't pay rent or help out. If she moved in with a newborn, asking her to leave would be 10 times harder. I can already imagine the resentment building if Mark can't work properly or if we have no privacy. Last week at a family dinner, my mom made a comment about how some people forget where they came from once they have a mortgage. Everyone knew it was aimed at me. I finally snapped and said that Lily chose to have unprotected sex and that it's not my responsibility to house her because of that choice. Lily burst into tears and left the table. Now half my family isn't speaking to me. Mark says he supports whatever decision I make, but admitted he will feel uncomfortable in his own home if Lily moves in. I feel stuck between protecting my future and being there for my sister in her most vulnerable moment. So, AITA for refusing to let my pregnant sister move into my house, even though I technically have the space. AITA for refusing to give my sister the house deposit I've been saving for years after she announced she's pregnant. I'm 32F. My sister is 28F. For most of our lives, I've been the responsible one. I got a steady job right out of college, lived with roommates well into my late 20s, skipped vacations, drove the same aging car, and quietly built up savings. My goal has always been simple: buy a small house of my own. Nothing fancy, just stability. My sister, on the other hand, has always been more spontaneous. She's fun, charismatic, and everyone gravitates toward her. She's changed jobs multiple times, traveled a lot, and generally lived in the moment. I don't judge her for that. It's her life. But it does mean she has almost no savings. 2 months ago, She announced that she and her boyfriend are expecting. The pregnancy wasn't exactly planned, but they're keeping the baby. I was genuinely happy for her. I offered to help with baby prep, hand-me-down hunting, even babysitting when the time comes. Last week, she came over to my apartment and asked to talk seriously. She told me their landlord is selling the condo they're renting, and they have to move in 3 months. With a baby on the way, they want to buy instead of rent again. She said they've been crunching numbers, and they can manage monthly payments, but they don't have enough for a down payment. Then she asked if I would loan her my savings, specifically the majority of my house fund. I was stunned. I've saved for nearly a decade. I asked how much she was talking about, and she named a number that is about 80% of what I have set aside. When I didn't immediately agree, she added that since I'm single and not in a rush, I could rebuild my savings over time. She said a baby can't wait, but my house can. I told her I needed time to think. That night, she texted me a long message about how this is what family does, how our parents helped us when we needed it, and how she would absolutely pay me back once they're more stable. She even said I could be the baby's favorite aunt, and that it would mean so much to her. Here's the thing. I don't trust that I'd ever see that money again. Not because she's evil, but because life happens. Babies are expensive. If they struggle, I know I would feel like a monster asking for repayments while they're buying diapers. And if they break up, I'd never get it back. I met with her again and told her I couldn't give her the money. I said I love her and I'll help in other ways, but I'm not comfortable giving up my entire safety net and postponing my own goals indefinitely. She immediately started crying. She said I'm choosing a hypothetical house over my real niece or nephew. She said she would do it for me. Our parents are now involved. They think I'm being cold. My mom said I've always been practical to the point of selfishness. My dad asked if I could at least give half. When I explained that even half would set me back years, he said that's what sacrifice looks like. My sister has stopped responding to my messages unless it's something passive-aggressive. She posted on social media about how some people only care about their own plans. Mutual friends have reached out asking what's going on. I haven't aired the details publicly because I don't want to embarrass her. What's really bothering me is that part of me feels guilty. I do have the money. I'm not struggling. I just worked really hard for it. But I also know that once it's gone, it's gone. I will be starting over at 32, possibly missing the window to buy before prices go up again. There's also a pattern. In the past, I've covered her portion of shared gifts, lent her money for emergencies that were not really emergencies, and co-signed a lease once when she had shaky credit. She did eventually pay me back those smaller amounts, but only after I reminded her multiple times. This is on a completely different scale. She told me, I'm acting like a bank instead of a sister. I told her she's asking me to be a bank. That didn't go over well. My parents have offered to contribute a small amount, but nowhere near what's needed. They said if we all pitch in, it shows unity. I asked if they would refinance their house to help her. They said that's different because they're nearing retirement. I pointed out that I'm also thinking about my future security. That conversation ended quickly. I keep replaying it in my head. If I say yes, I might resent her for years, especially if I see them taking vacations or making purchases I wouldn't feel comfortable making myself. If I say no, I risk permanently damaging our relationship. She insists this is about the baby having stability. But plenty of people rent with babies. It's not ideal, but it's not unsafe. I can't shake the feeling that this is more about wanting the milestone of homeownership than actual necessity. At the same time, I worry I'm being rigid. Maybe this is what being a good aunt and sister means. Maybe I'm too attached to my plan. So, AITA for refusing to give my sister the down payment money I've spent nearly a decade saving. Even though she's pregnant and says her family needs it more than I do. AITA for refusing to help my sister move, even though I promised months ago. I, 32F, have always been close to my sister, Emily, 28F. We grew up together, went to the same schools, and even lived in the same city for a few years after college. Emily has always been a little high maintenance, let's say. She's smart and capable, but she tends to panic when things get stressful and expects people around her to drop everything to help her. I'm usually happy to help her when it's reasonable, but I've learned over the years to set boundaries, because otherwise I end up exhausted or frustrated. A few months ago, Emily called me and told me she was moving to a bigger apartment. She was excited and stressed at the same time. She asked if I could help her move during the weekend she was planning for mid-February. At the time, I agreed because I thought it would be manageable. I cleared my weekend, thinking it wouldn't be too complicated. I had no idea that the situation was about to spiral. As the move approached, Emily started adding more and more details that made it seem impossible. She expected me to help her pack in addition to actually moving boxes and furniture. She also said she had hired movers, but only for the heavy stuff, which was fine, but then she added that she wanted me to coordinate the movers, clean the old apartment, and unpack everything in the new place. I tried to tell her that I could help with moving boxes and maybe a few small tasks, but I couldn't dedicate an entire weekend to her project. Emily insisted that I could easily manage it and that I had promised months ago. I reminded her that I agreed to help her move, not to take over the whole operation. Meanwhile, my own life was getting complicated. I had just started a new job, and the training was intensive. I also had a small freelance project that I couldn't postpone. When I told Emily I might not be able to commit to her entire weekend because of work, she got upset. She said that I was being selfish and that I had agreed to this months ago, so I had no excuse now. I tried to reason with her, but she became increasingly emotional, saying that I was abandoning her in a critical time and that she felt betrayed. I decided to compromise. I offered to come for the move for part of Saturday and Sunday, but I told her I couldn't take Friday off or spend all day coordinating her movers. Emily reluctantly agreed, but I could sense her disappointment. A week before the move, she started sending me detailed spreadsheets of furniture, packing boxes, and even a moving schedule she expected me to follow. She included instructions on what to pack, how to pack it, and even how to arrange items in the new apartment. At this point, I felt uncomfortable and overwhelmed. I realized that the promise I made months ago was not being respected as a reasonable agreement. It had morphed into something that required my full attention and energy for the whole weekend. 2 days before the move, I sat down and looked at my calendar. I was already stressed from work, and adding her entire moving weekend on top of that felt impossible. I called Emily and explained that I could not commit to the full weekend and that I would only be able to help for a few hours each day. I told her I was sorry, but that I had work obligations and personal responsibilities that I couldn't ignore. Emily reacted badly. She shouted that I was being so selfish and so unreliable, and that she didn't understand why I would back out at the last minute. I tried to explain that it was not last minute. I've been telling her for weeks that my availability was limited, but she refused to listen. On moving day, I showed up at the agreed-upon time, but the tension was palpable. Emily barely acknowledged me and kept giving me instructions as if I were her employee rather than her sister. I moved boxes and helped with some furniture, but I refused to do things like unpack her kitchen or rearrange furniture according to her spreadsheets. She kept sighing loudly and muttering under her breath about how she couldn't rely on me for anything. After a few hours, she started texting other friends and family asking for help. She even made comments like, "I guess my sister is too busy to care about me." I felt hurt because I was genuinely helping within the limits I had set. By the end of the day, I was exhausted, frustrated, and emotionally drained. Emily told me she still had a lot of work to do and that she expected more from me, which I found unreasonable. Later that night, I sent Emily a message explaining my feelings. I told her that I was happy to help, but that the expectations she set were unrealistic and that she had ignored my boundaries. She responded by calling me selfish and saying that I didn't care about her at all. I tried to explain that I do care, but that caring doesn't mean sacrificing my own responsibilities or mental health. She hasn't spoken to me much since the move, except to thank me for my help, but the tension is still there. Several friends and family members have weighed in, and the opinions are split. Some say I should have just gone along with whatever she wanted and ignore my own needs. Others say that I was completely reasonable in setting limits, and that Emily was overreacting. I feel guilty because I don't want to hurt my sister, but I also feel like my boundaries are valid. I've never had a conflict like this with her before, and I'm not sure how to move forward. So AITA for refusing to take over my sister's move, even though I promised to help months ago? AITA for potentially ruining my sister's wedding by refusing to lie about something important? I, 32M, have always had a complicated relationship with my younger sister, Emily, 29F. We grew up in a family where honesty was highly valued, sometimes to a fault. Our parents would often say, "The truth will always come out, so you might as well say it first," which stuck with me and, I think, shaped my worldview. Emily, on the other hand, has always been more concerned with appearances and avoiding conflict. She's not dishonest per se, but she tends to stretch the truth or omit details if she thinks it will make life easier or more pleasant. Emily has been dating her fiancé, Jason, 31M, for about 4 years. When they got engaged last year, I was happy for her, even though our relationship has been strained at times due to differing values and a history of unresolved sibling rivalry. The wedding planning began about 6 months ago, and Emily asked me to be the best man. I agreed, mostly because I wanted to support her despite our differences. A couple of months into the planning, Emily confided in me that she had chosen a wedding venue that had a bit of a controversial reputation. Apparently, a few years ago, the venue had been fined for some safety violations, but Emily was reassured by the new management that everything was up to code. I mentioned that while I didn't think it was a big deal, I might feel a little uncomfortable explaining this to certain guests if the topic came up. Emily brushed it off and asked me not to mention it at all if anyone asked. She framed it as, just tell people everything's fine and no one will care. Fast forward to 2 weeks before the wedding, my cousin Laura, 27F, asked me about the venue because she remembered the past controversy. I told her that the venue had a checkered past, but that everything was reportedly fixed and inspected. Later, Emily found out and was furious. She called me and said I had ruined the perfect image of her wedding and accused me of trying to sabotage it. I explained that I wasn't trying to ruin anything. I just felt like honesty was important. She said that honesty wasn't the issue. She wanted to control the narrative for her special day, and by telling Laura, I had undermined that. She demanded an apology and that I promised to lie if anyone else asked about it. I refused. I told her that I wasn't going to lie for the sake of appearances, especially about something that could potentially affect people's safety or at least cause unnecessary worry. This led to a major argument, where Emily accused me of being selfish and petty, claiming that I only care about my moral high ground and not about her happiness. She said that I was being difficult and that this could affect my role as best man. I responded by saying that being best man isn't about being a prop to support a false narrative. It's about standing by someone genuinely. She hung up on me after that. A few days later, our parents got involved. They tried to mediate, telling me that Emily was just stressed and that I should compromise for the sake of family harmony. I agreed to keep quiet going forward, but refused to actively lie if someone asked me directly about the venue's past. They weren't thrilled with this, but didn't push further. The wedding happened last weekend. I gave my best man speech, which went well, and overall the ceremony was beautiful. Emily didn't talk to me much during the reception and avoided being seen with me in photos, which was awkward. At one point, a guest asked me about the venue's history, and I gave a vague answer, something like, there were issues in the past, but it's all resolved now. Emily glared at me from across the room, but no one seemed to make a big deal out of it. After the wedding, Emily sent me a text saying she was disappointed in me and that she felt I had put her in a difficult position. She said that our parents sided with her and that my insistence on truth at all costs made me seem cold and unsupportive. She ended the text by saying she hoped this wouldn't permanently damage our relationship, but she clearly harbored resentment. Since then, family members have approached me privately. Some understand my position and think Emily was overreacting, while others think I should have swallowed my principles for one day to avoid conflict. I feel torn. On one hand, I don't regret being honest, but on the other, I realize that my refusal to fully go along with Emily's request caused tension during a day that was supposed to be joyful. I'm starting to wonder if I was genuinely in the wrong for not bending the truth just for appearances. I understand that a wedding is a special event, and that sometimes minor truths are overlooked for the sake of celebration. But this situation feels different because it involves safety and integrity. So, Reddit AITA for refusing to lie about the venue's past. even if it upset my sister and caused tension at her wedding. AITA for refusing to help my brother after he borrowed a large sum of money and expected me to cover for him. This started about a year ago, and it's been building up ever since. I, 32M, have a younger brother, Tom, 28M, who's always had a habit of making questionable financial decisions. Growing up, our parents were careful with money, and they tried to teach both of us about budgeting and saving. Tom, however, never seemed to care. He would spend his allowance on gadgets, video games, and random subscriptions while I focused on saving for college and eventually my first apartment. We've always had a decent relationship, but financial responsibility has been a source of tension between us for years. About a year ago, Tom got himself into serious debt. He didn't really tell anyone about it until he was desperate. He had borrowed money from multiple friends and even taken out payday loans. The total debt came to around $12,000. He called me one afternoon, panicked, asking for a small loan to cover his immediate bills. I was hesitant, as I had just bought a house and had ongoing mortgage payments, but I ended up lending him $2,000 because I felt guilty and wanted to help him avoid ruining his credit. At that point, I thought it would be a one-time thing, a bridge until he got back on his feet. Over the next few months, Tom's financial situation didn't improve. He kept coming up with new emergencies, car repairs, medical bills, even late rent payments. Each time, he asked me for money. The first couple of times, I reluctantly helped, but I started noticing a pattern. He wasn't trying to fix the problem, just relying on me as a safety net. I began setting boundaries and told him I couldn't keep bailing him out. He agreed, at least in words, and I thought the worst was over. Then about 3 months ago, he called me late at night in a panic. Apparently, he had borrowed $15,000 from a friend for an investment he was sure would work and now couldn't pay it back. He begged me to cover the payment temporarily until he could flip it and pay me back within a few weeks. I told him flat out that I couldn't lend him that much money. I explained that I already had financial obligations, and giving him $15,000 would put me in serious jeopardy. He became upset and accused me of being selfish, saying that a good brother would help family in times of need. We argued, and eventually he hung up. A week later, our parents called me, furious. They had learned about the $15,000 and assumed that I had refused to help him because I didn't care about family. They pressured me, saying I should at least talk to Tom and figure out a way to help him pay the money back. I told them I didn't want to get involved financially anymore, as I'd already helped more than I could afford. My parents were not happy and kept bringing it up during family gatherings, which made things awkward. Things escalated a few weeks later when Tom came to my apartment unannounced. He was upset and claimed he was in deep trouble and needed me to co-sign a loan so he could pay off his debts. I refused and told him he needed to take responsibility for his own choices. He accused me of abandoning him and said I was treating him like a child. I tried to explain that helping him repeatedly had only enabled him and that I couldn't jeopardize my financial stability to fix his problems. He stormed out, slamming the door, and hasn't spoken to me since except for sporadic texts blaming me for his situation. After this, my parents and some extended family started calling me selfish or uncaring. My friends, who know both of us, are divided. Some say I'm right to set boundaries and protect my finances, while others think family should always step up in emergencies. I've been feeling guilty and stressed, as it's put me in a difficult position where my brother resents me, my parents are upset, and I feel like I'm walking on eggshells at family events. I have considered ways to help that don't involve lending money, like helping Tom create a budget, offering advice on debt consolidation, or helping him find a financial counselor. But every time I try to suggest alternatives, he dismisses them, insisting that the only solution is me giving him money. It's frustrating because I want him to succeed and avoid financial ruin, but I also need to maintain my boundaries. I've tried explaining that repeatedly bailing him out only delays the problem and could harm both of us in the long run. To make matters worse, a few days ago, Tom posted on social media about how family should help you when you're down and tagged me indirectly. People commented, asking why I wasn't helping, which made me feel even more isolated and criticized publicly. I haven't responded, but it's added to the stress. I'm worried that my stance is damaging my relationship with him permanently. But at the same time, I can't see a reasonable path where I just hand him tens of thousands of dollars. I keep replaying scenarios in my head, wondering if I could have handled things differently, maybe helping him one last time, but with strict conditions, or if I was too harsh in saying no. I feel like I'm caught between wanting to be a supportive brother and not enabling behavior that could lead to disaster for both of us. I know people often say family comes first, but I also feel like protecting my financial stability and teaching him responsibility are important too. I've tried compromise in the past, but it seems like no matter what, he wants immediate monetary assistance. So, AITA for refusing to cover my brother's massive debts and insisting he take responsibility for his own financial mistakes. I genuinely want to help in ways that don't involve giving him large sums of money, but he refuses anything short of that. I've done my best to support him emotionally and offer advice, but he sees it as abandoning him. I'm feeling torn because family is important to me, but I also have to protect my own life and finances. I'm hoping someone can give me perspective on whether I've been unreasonable or if standing my ground is justified. AITA for causing a massive family rift over something that seems trivial to everyone else. I, 27F, come from a very tight-knit, traditional family. My parents, siblings, and grandparents all live within a 10-mile radius, and family gatherings are pretty much sacred. Everyone knows everyone's business, and secrets don't exist. I've always been the responsible one in the family, good grades, steady job, and I even helped my younger siblings get through school. So naturally, when I moved into my first apartment after college, everyone was excited for me. I thought it was just going to be a small, quiet chapter in my life, but quickly turned into something much bigger. When I moved in, I inherited a large, somewhat outdated apartment. It had a lot of character, but also a lot of issues: peeling wallpaper, outdated kitchen appliances, and this weird balcony that could barely hold a chair. I decided I wanted to renovate it in my own style. I had saved a decent amount of money, and I figured I'd tackle it slowly, doing one room at a time. The problem began with the living room. I wanted to get rid of the heavy, dark furniture my landlord had left behind and replace it with lighter, more modern pieces. My parents and siblings, however, were horrified. According to them, that furniture had family history because it had belonged to my grandmother and had been in the family for decades. They said it was disrespectful to get rid of it, especially since my grandmother had passed away not long ago. I tried to explain that the furniture was uncomfortable, old, and didn't fit my space, but they kept insisting that I should honor my grandmother by keeping it. I ended up moving the furniture into storage and putting in new pieces. My parents found out when they visited a week later and completely lost it. They accused me of being selfish and disrespectful and even questioned my mental stability because no one in the family would ever do something like this. I was shocked. They were literally yelling at me over a couch and a coffee table. I tried to stay calm and explain that this was my apartment and my choice, but they wouldn't listen. Things escalated when I started inviting friends over. I had a friend who was an interior designer, and she came over to help me with the color palette and layout. My parents and sister saw her and assumed I was showing off and trying to make them jealous. They accused me of having strangers interfere in family matters and even suggested I was trying to erase my grandmother's memory. At this point, I felt like I was dealing with a completely different family than the one I had grown up with. It got worse at Thanksgiving. I invited my parents, siblings, and grandparents to my apartment. My parents walked in and immediately started commenting on how cold and soulless the place felt. They were specifically upset about the living room and my choice of artwork, modern abstract pieces instead of family portraits. They told me that this was a family gathering, not a gallery showing, and that my apartment was inappropriate for family functions. My grandparents, who were normally very sweet and supportive, stayed quiet, which I interpreted as them being uncomfortable but not wanting to get involved. Then my younger brother, who is usually very level-headed, chimed in. He said I had completely overstepped by changing the apartment and that I needed to compromise if I wanted the family to feel welcome. I told him I had already tried to compromise by keeping the furniture in storage instead of throwing it away. He didn't seem satisfied and stormed out mid-dinner. After that, my parents and sister stopped talking to me for several weeks. They only communicated through my brother, who kept sending messages like, "Mom and Dad are really hurt, and you need to fix this." I tried calling, texting, and even visiting, but they ignored me or lectured me about how I was being disrespectful. At one point, my sister sent a long message listing all the ways I had disrespected the family legacy by redecorating and said that my grandmother would be disappointed in me from heaven. I was crushed because I genuinely loved my grandmother and didn't mean any harm, but they refused to see it from my perspective. To try to make peace, I offered to put some family photos back on the wall and even suggested keeping a few of the old furniture pieces in the guest room. My parents responded by saying it was too late and that my choices had already ruined the apartment's connection to the family. I felt trapped. I couldn't win no matter what I did. I even considered moving the furniture back into the living room, but my friends convinced me that my apartment should reflect my life and not just be a shrine to the past. Things finally reached a breaking point when I decided to host a small birthday dinner for myself. I invited a mix of friends and family. My parents showed up, but the moment they saw my modern, impersonal decorations, they made a scene, claiming I had turned the apartment into a museum for strangers. My sister got visibly upset and left halfway through the dinner. My younger brother stayed, but I could see he was conflicted. After everyone left, my parents sent a long email criticizing me for being self-absorbed and cutting off the family from its roots. I honestly feel like I did nothing wrong. It's my apartment. I didn't insult anyone. I didn't sell or destroy any heirlooms. And I even tried to find a middle ground. But my family seems to believe that any personal choice I make that deviates from tradition is a betrayal. I feel frustrated, hurt, and isolated. I've tried talking to them, but it feels like the harder I try to explain myself, the worse it gets. I'm now considering whether to give in and redo the living room with the old furniture, just to restore peace. But I also don't want to feel like my home is being dictated by someone else. I want to respect my family and honor my grandmother, but I also want to live in a space that feels like me. So, AITA for wanting my apartment to reflect my own style instead of strictly following family traditions, even if it upset them to the point of cutting me off for weeks. Thank you for watching until the end. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to like and subscribe to the channel so you won't miss new videos also. Leave a comment. I'd love to hear your thoughts. Your support and engagement mean a lot to me. See you in the next video.